Hello everyone, I am the Storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? The penultimate. It was a bit of a shock to see Sophie again at the door on a Thursday evening during the pre-news sitcoms, because by all accounts, she was quite dead. Peter Lander distinctly recalled kissing her passionately, bittersweetly even, because it was their last kiss, and he knew it even if she didn't. Right before he blew her brains out with his Colt python, he knew he was right, because Eileen made a big fuss. Why the hell did you kiss her? She's my wife. Not anymore. True. And given the insides of her skull confettied all over the living room. And that later that week, they put the rest of the package 6 feet under. And then a day after that, they collected on the staggering life insurance. Yes, Sophie was dead. She had to be. And yet, hello, Peter, said Sophie, standing at their door. Said Peter. Dirt dribbled from her dress and hair, and actually, she was covered in dirt. No makeup, but her hair was done up, and frankly, she looked like she might just have gotten back from a rainy rugby match, which she for some reason played in her funeral dress. And maybe she was a little paler than usual. Oh, and she had that gaping hole in her forehead, of course. Sophie rolled her eyes, pushed past him, and muttered something about, "Why don't I let myself in?" Peter followed her to the kitchen, where Eileen was making herself a vodka cranberry. "Oh my God," said Eileen. Her tone was shocked, but not the kind of shocked you get when you see a dead person walking around, but rather when you see the wrong dead person walking around, like when you're in line at the express checkout, but the old guy in front has more than 10 items, and it's noisy, and the AC doesn't work, and a greasy tween elbows you in the boob and doesn't even notice, much less apologize. "Peter, what the hell? She just showed up," he said with a shrug. "What do you want from me?" "Right," said Sophie. She placed a briefcase on the kitchen table, her lawyering briefcase from back when she was alive, and a lawyering, and unclasped it. "Gather round. Family meeting time." Peter and Eileen sat, though she huffed and crossed her arms and kept the vodka at hand. "Are you even part of our family anymore?" Eileen asked. Sophie glared her silent. Then she pulled out piles of papers, old yellow paper, covered in horrid red ink, all over the table. "Soph," Peter said. And then he winced. He never really knew how to broach deeper topics with her, which was maybe why their marriage was so-so. What's happened to you? Are you a ghost?" "She's obviously a zombie," Eileen snapped. "I told you to use the shotgun, but did you listen?" "No." Sophie drew herself up and sniffed. "I am not a ghost, Peter. Ghosts aren't real." Out of her briefcase, she pulled out, reverently, a ruby-red fountain pen. Except it wasn't merely ruby red, it was ruby, with a gold nib, and placed it gently beside her. "Neither am I anything so gauche as a zombie," Eileen pouted. "I am a revenant." Peter and Eileen shared a look. "What's a revenant?" he asked. "I'll put it this way. When I ran into the devil in hell—" "Told you lawyers went to hell?" Eileen said, sneering. Sophie cleared her throat. "When I ran into the devil, I made a deal with him. He'd let me come back as an undead murder machine so that I could wreak unholy vengeance on those who wronged me. You know, tear you limb from limb, eat your heart, and drag your sorry soul back down with me. Kind of one last big hurrah in the world of the living." Peter gulped. Eileen dropped her glass, which wobbled on the table and spilled all over her lap. "Thing is," Sophie continued, holding up a parchment covered in bloody writing, "I've gone over this contract hundreds of times, and as soon as I kill you, I go back too. But not until..." She took a couple fresher-looking sheets of yellow paper and slid them across the table, one each for Peter and Eileen. "So, I'm willing to offer you a deal. Feel free to read over that. But the gist is, I don't murder you, and in exchange, I get to live here and get access to the millions from my life insurance policy." Peter looked at his paper and gulped. "Is this written in blood?" "It's Lucifer ink, by Lucifer Inc., Sophie said. Then, with a distant look in her eyes and an unsubtle tremble, she added, "Blood tends to boil down there. Oh, it is written on human leather, though." Peter and Eileen dropped their papers. "What if we don't sign?" Eileen asked. "Then I murder you now and drag your soul down to hell. Can we just shoot you again?" Peter asked. "Technically, yes. But come on, Peter. Use your thinking brain. I'm already dead. Even if you managed to destroy my body by blowing it up or something, I'd just come right back, like some cheesy slasher flick. And the neighbors would probably complain about the noise." Oh, Peter and Eileen held quiet counsel for just a moment, wiggling their eyebrows and making meaningful expressions at each other. Of course, since Sophie knew them both intimately, one as a husband and the other also as a mistress, their secret language was no secret to her. She lay her ruby pen before them. "What kind of pen is that?" asked Eileen. "A pen par excellence. The pen ultimate. The devil's very own quill. Utterly binding on a soul level. I might have swiped it from his desk. What? Don't look at me like that. It's not like I can possibly get into even more trouble. What choice did they have? They signed. Then for a second, they shimmered in a red glow and experienced a pang of bowel distress. And it was done, and Sophie moved back into the house she paid for. Her old firm wouldn't take her back when she called. No offense, Soph, and I mean that. You were one of the best, for sure. It's just people already see us as ghoulish, and if we brought you back, well, it'd no longer be libel, would it? So she plopped herself down on the living room couch, right in the middle, so Peter and Eileen couldn't cuddle up on it while watching a nice rom-com or something. Not that they watched rom-coms, because Sophie had control of the remote, and she binged trashy reality TV 24 hours a day. Maybe someone else would want to watch something, Eileen said. Maybe someone else should get a job and buy the TV, Sophie snapped. And 24 hours a day really was 24 hours a day, since Sophie didn't sleep. You mind turning that down at night? Peter asked, after he caught himself humming a reality theme song in the shower. It's just, I can't sleep. Yes, Peter, said Sophie. I do mind. And then she cranked the volume up. The only thing that competed with the blaring TV was the shrill ding of the doorbell, going off like clockwork. Also, at all hours of the day. Having some free time, for perhaps the first time in her life, Sophie crawled the online shopping sites and splurged on whatever caught her eye. After all, her life insurance money was as much hers as anyone else's. And given this was her retirement, she had nothing to save for. The lack of responsibility felt liberating. The living room was soon filled with unread books, unworn clothes, unwatched movies, unexercised workout machines, and uneaten chocolate. Somewhere, she even found a life-size alabaster unicorn, whose horn scratched up the low ceiling. And because she refused to budge from the couch, muttering something about the sentimental value of it being the place her brain was ejected, it fell to Peter and Eileen to get the deliveries. It was exhausting in their spare moments. Peter and Eileen mostly stuck to the kitchen, where the blaring TV was at least a little muted. Having company over was difficult, because all their friends understandably kept bringing up the Sophie situation. And frankly, it was getting embarrassing, explaining themselves over and over, and stressing that the living room was Sophie's room, and so it was best to leave it be. Eileen hit the bottle increasingly hard, and Peter took up smoking again. Easy, since Sophie no longer nagged him about it. This isn't working for me, Eileen said one night. Peter nodded. This isn't how I pictured our early retirement. Peter nodded again. Are you listening to me? Christ, yes. What do you want from me? I want the life of luxury I was promised. I want to be able to host our friends with swanky parties. She pouted. I want my yacht. Peter rolled his eyes. Don't you dare, he sighed and massaged the bridge of his nose. It's not ideal, is it? What can we do? I thought we were rid of her. Be nice. No, said Eileen. I'm sick of this. I wish we never signed that stupid contract. Well, she would have murdered us. And, the whole hell thing. Whatever. Then Eileen's eyes lit up. Hey, maybe there's a loophole. Where's the contract? Stealing Sophie's briefcase wasn't too hard. What with the TV blaring, and her attention focused entirely on the very real antics of the very real people on display. They brought it back to the kitchen for some privacy and started going through the papers. Sophie's contract with the devil was huge. It took them a solid week to go through it. A week made all the harder by the constant interruptions from deliveries. But finally, on Friday, they hit on something. Footnote 28397, Peter read. Note that the Revenant has license to seek revenge on exactly one former aggressor. As soon as such an aggressor is slain, the Revenant contract is concluded, and both souls become the property of Lucifer, Inc. Note that collateral damage is permitted. What's that mean? Eileen asked. I'm reading. Hold on. Basically, if she blows us up or something, that's fine too. The contract's done when one of us dies, but there's no penalty, I guess, if we're both dead. Super. So very encouraging. Shh. Wait. There's more. Peter adjusted his glasses and took a drag on his cigarette. Note also that the contract will be concluded if any of the aggressors should die by any means, whether caused by the Revenant or not. This includes, but is not limited to, traffic accidents, war, acts of God, peanut butter, old age, or being murdered by someone else. Said Eileen, setting her drink down. Said Peter. What do you suppose that means? I guess, Eileen hedged, if one of us were to die, then... Peter set his cigarette down on the table. He locked eyes with Eileen, and neither blinked, as an ad for an energy drink roared in the background. At once, she flew at the counter, and he dived for the pantry. And they both kicked over their kitchen table. Eileen grabbed the first things available to her, a cutting board covered in raw, soon-to-be schnitzels, and a gory meat tenderizer. She flung the floppy meat patties across the room and roared, hoisting her tenderizer into the air. And then, with a shriek, brought her cutting board up, just in time to block the worst of a volley of canned pinto beans. Peter charged her with a battle cry, holding a jumbo can of tomato juice with both hands. He leapt at her, right as she swung. Her tenderizer savaged his temple, but he tackled her. I think we should see other people, he roared, bringing his can of tomato juice down and down again. Eileen screamed, desperately blocking with her cutting board and flailing her face tenderizer, until it finally connected with his jaw. It was enough for her to push him off and then roll on top. And now Peter was on the defensive. It's not you. It's me, she cried. And each time her weapon came down, torrents of blood, or tomato, it was hard to tell, splattered everything. They rolled again when Peter was able to get a hold of a raw schnitzel and shove it into her face. And then again, when she managed to can opener his ear. And on it went, until they both flopped onto the kitchen floor, gasping for breath, covered in cuts and bruises and meat. "Truce," he wheezed. "Yeah," she managed, and then coughed. "I thought killing was supposed to get easier after the first one." "Hey, do you smell that?" Eileen sniffed. "Is something burning?" Laboriously, they both sat up and found their kitchen to be on fire. The worst of the blaze was their table, which had been covered in Sophie's dry old contracts, Eileen's liquor, and Peter's lit cigarette. "Oh, hell," he muttered as the flames drew closer. Then they both screamed for help. Sophie ignored them at first, because their drama was just too much, and nowhere near as interesting as TV. But it grated on her enough that she finally rose off the couch. By then, the kitchen was a conflagration, with nary any raw meat in sight. Neither schnitzel nor Peter and Eileen. "Damn it," she said, planting her hands on her hips. "You two are just the worst." And then she exploded into a cloud of sulfur and flame, and the house burned down, every last drop. I enter Red Square from the south side. It's late. There's no one else around. My footfalls echo across the bricks. Then I spot him, a slender figure beneath one of the cherry trees outside Drake Hall. Silvery white hair pulled back in a ponytail. Black gloves, combat boots, a wool trench coat, the preferred attire of all psychopaths. I reach into my purse. In the next instant, he is standing right beside me. "Excuse me, miss." I pepper spray him in the face. He takes it stoically, with little more than a wince. I empty the entire can, but he just stands there, squinching, like it's nothing but tepid water. Then he wipes his obsidian eyes clean with his gloved fingertips. I suppose I deserve that. I forget how fast we seem to you. Forgive me. I mean no harm. I will scream. "You're Anika Chande, yes? From the physics department?" "Doctor," I say by reflex, sounding breathless. "Who are you?" "Or what?" "Dr. Chande, forgive me," he repeats, extending a hand. "My name is Sasha Volkov. I've read your books and all the papers you've published. Your work with photons is nothing short of brilliant. No pun intended." "Thank you," I say flatly. I don't believe in auras, but if I did, his would be ice cold. I decline his handshake. I don't want my blood to crystallize in my veins. "I'm hoping you will help me," he continues. "You are perhaps the only one who can." "I don't think so." His pencil-thin eyebrows pin together. "You don't understand." "No, you don't understand. You don't warp 15 yards across a plaza in the blink of an eye, demonstrate a superhuman immunity to capsaicin, and then ask for a favor. I see you're sporting a nice pair of fangs as well. That's very cute. Am I being punked? No, ma'am. He pulls a handkerchief out of his coat and mops his face with it. Although I have been told I look like Slavic Ashton Kutcher, I'm calling the campus police. Please, hear me out. Look, I'll show you. He walks into a beam of moonlight and vanishes. Not entirely. His outfit is still visible, but there's no one inside it. I start to deliver on my promise to scream, but the sound catches in my throat. The ludicrousness of the sight, the sheer improbability. I must be suffering a psychotic break from the stress of finals, or the sushi I had for lunch is causing hallucinations, makes me scoff and start laughing instead. Very impressive. Bravo. You see, the trench coat says, gloves raised in a gesture of helplessness. Somewhere along the way, our species developed this ability or disability, depending on your point of view, to disappear under direct light. That's why we're nocturnal. You might assume this gives us a natural predatory advantage, but it's actually incredibly frustrating. Imagine trying to eat a sandwich without being able to see your hands, and it's painful. The stronger the light, the more intense the discomfort. Is that why you live in Seattle? I snort. Because the sun is never out? Yes, exactly. Makes sense. I have a hunch there may be some sort of interference at the quantum level between our body's atoms and solar photons. That's why we have no reflection and can't be captured on film. But the human mind can't abide the irrationality, so by rote, it forms a composite to make us appear whole. He returns to the shadows and rematerializes. A fancy illusion, just smoke and mirrors. Nothing to see here. No need for an anchor to drop into my stomach, or the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up. Nature had to find some way of keeping us in check, or we would have rendered you extinct by now. What do you want? I ask, wishing my voice didn't make me sound so fragile, so human. There was an article about you in the school newsletter recently. Thanks to a generous donation from someone who wished to remain anonymous, your lab was able to get a new quantum camera and an entangled photon detector. Volkov grins, his cobra-like fangs glistening even in the dark. I am that mysterious benefactor, and I want you to take my picture. Please stop messing with me. This really isn't funny at all. I'm quite serious, actually. We use simple objects for quantum imaging, like an emblem made out of gold and silicon, not living beings. Well, according to your lore, I'm not really alive. Isn't that right? I grip the strap of my purse. certain at any moment I'm going to wake up in a puddle of my own drool at my desk, having fallen into a fever dream. Undead beings, then. The fact remains. You injure me, Doctor. I am not a zombie or a virus. My physiology is nearly identical to yours, with a few notable differences, of course. His stare is beyond unsettling. I cast my gaze towards the parking lot and keep it there in case he's trying to hypnotize me. It's very late. I need to be getting home to my family. He pretends not to hear me and carries on. I understand there may be challenges. That's why I'm asking you. You're the only one who can rise to the task. Mr. Volkov, whomever or whatever you are, I suggest you learn to take no for an answer. The first time, not the second or third or fourth. I stride away, making sure to keep my head held high, projecting indifference. Oh, come now, he says, voice dropping to an impossibly low pitch. I could just compel you to do it, but I'd rather you choose. This is an exciting opportunity for us both. My legs grow heavy. Against my will? How is he doing that? I stop in my tracks, my heartbeat rising rapidly into my throat. A mysterious gravity pulls me back in his direction, like my subconscious has staged a coup. I swallow against the growing certainty that this is actually happening. Only a monster would fail to see the false dichotomy of his proposal. All right then. Fine. In the lab, I keep the overhead lights off. The light from the monitors will have to suffice. As soon as we're inside, Volkov makes a beeline for the oversized Faraday cage one of my students built as part of her thesis. Like he knew it would be here, waiting for him. What material is this lined with? He asks through the open door. Aluminum foil. Ah, why? Worried it was silver? The muscles of his jaw twitch. No, that's another myth. Along with aversion to the crucifix, garlic, and wooden stakes. Nothing but superstitious nonsense, which, if I'm honest, I find rather insulting. I see. It's going to take a while to get everything prepared. I can wait, I hear him say. Except his lips didn't move. Much like your ascetic monks, we are capable of remaining motionless for protracted periods of time. Even when speaking into my mind, he sounds like a robot. Stop that. I don't like it. It's invasive. Forgive me, he says for the millionth time. But at least it's out loud. I set to work calibrating the laser with the beam splitter. Then ensure the quantum camera is in position to catch all the action. Once the photons pass through the vacuum chamber and into the Faraday cage, they will entangle with Volkov's atoms, or won't, if there is indeed some sort of interference. Then the beam will be rejoined on the other side by a sensor. The high-precision spectrometer, along with the computer program on my laptop, will gather and interpret the data. You do understand that should we manage to get an image, it's going to be little more than a ghostly outline, right? Nothing like an actual photograph. When was the last time you saw your reflection, Doctor? In the bathroom, after class, I've never seen myself at all. Not in the surface of a lake, nor the glint of an eye, nor a darkened pane of glass. You cannot cast a shadow if you are never in the sun. I've commissioned sketches and paintings, of course, but it isn't the same, is it? I've never seen a real, tangible image of Sasha Volkov. He pauses. Because he's so still, I can't tell if he's battling with something or just going dormant. Can you imagine how that feels? To have so little confirmation of your very existence? I mean, I teach for a living. I shrug. I wonder how many people he's fed on. How many pints of blood he's drank. Thousands, he says, reading my thoughts again. Why is that relevant? I asked you not to do that. I can't help it. It's like asking me to ignore a blaring car alarm. If you want my help, then you can try. He doesn't move. Yet I feel his irritation growing, as though he's funneling his feelings directly into me. How many animals have you consumed in your lifetime? How many cows, chickens, fish? I'm vegan. Have been since 2006. Figured you would know that. The point is, you don't think of your food in those terms. Would you castigate a lion for feasting on a lamb? It is the way of things. We have been with you since the beginning, in the shade of your monuments, co-evolving. Nature designed us for a singular purpose, to cull the human herd. But as you can see, we're doing a piss-poor job of it. There's more of you than ever. In a surprising, potentially deceptive twist, I feel his emotions sink into self-pity, like he believes, ultimately, it is he who is the victim. Aren't your kind just humans who've been bitten and turned? Like Lestat and Lewis, his irritation blooms into full-blown disgust. Ridiculous. Can you turn a chimpanzee into a Homo sapiens? We reproduce the same way you mammals do, via fornication and pregnancy. We are warm-blooded, after all. It's just not our blood. It doesn't originate from our bone marrow. His anger cools a few degrees, and he adds, I have never been human, but I have lived. I have seen wonders and horrors you cannot begin to fathom. We have our own society, tucked away in the nooks and crannies of yours. Our own ambitions, too. Glad for the change of subject, I announce. We are ready to run our first trial. Please stop talking now and remain stationary. Volkov shuts the door and settles in. I click on the laser. The beam is split and sent into the cage. The hum of the machinery comforts me, brings to mind the many students who've used it to embark on their first voyage into the realm of the subatomic. The inevitable look of rapture when they finally see the particles they've spent so long reading about. In the midst of this rumination, I realize it's providing a kind of psychic cover. My subject is occupied, the grip of his influence weakened. I slip a ballpoint pen into the pocket of my blazer and pray he doesn't notice. We run 6 trials in total. The whole process takes a little over 2 hours. Once it's finished, I take a screenshot of the results and send it to the printer in my office. Volkov exits the cage and joins me, and once it's printed, I hand him the copy. He accepts it like it's his birth certificate. Like I said, pretty grainy, but it worked, he murmurs. His fingers trace over the grayscale form, caressing it. He is totally transfixed. I feel his heady mixture of elation and awe, the vanity that coils around his heart like a serpent. "It's me," he whispers. "You got what you came for. I need to get going now. My family will be worried." Volkov gives me the side eye. "Surely you know by now that lying to me is pointless." "I don't know what you mean." "If I don't get home soon, they'll..." "You live alone, doctor. Have since your breakup with Paul. You don't own any pets, nothing that depends on you for its survival. Not so much as a cactus. Your younger sister calls to check up on you, every so often, but not often enough." He sounds bored with the subject, preferring to pore over the printout with the intensity of an art appraiser. "Is there anything else your system picked up on?" I push aside the sense of betrayal and shake my head. The emissions analysis produced a string of errors that would seem to confirm your hypothesis of some kind of interference, as no entanglement occurred in any of the 6 runs. But it would take a much more thorough experiment to isolate the actual cause of that interference. "I see," he says, licking his chops. "No matter. Still a tremendous success." Unable to help myself, I blurt out, "Are you going to kill me now?" He blanches. He's probably manipulating me, but I can feel the sting of hurt feelings in his chest. "Of course not, Doctor. You have me all wrong." He clutches the printout in both hands and peers around the lab, taking it all in. "I want you to study me further. Enlist the help of others, if need be. People we can trust to test my DNA and take blood samples. Think about it. If we can produce more results like this, you can publish them. These findings will fundamentally alter the world's understanding of biology and quantum mechanics. And what might that do for your career?" When I don't say anything, he continues, "It's time Homo sapiens learned they are not so alone as they imagine. It is time for us to evolve beyond the predator/prey dynamic and work together. We have to do something before your species gets us all killed with your utter disregard for the health of this planet." His eyes land on me. Despite his words, I feel sick to my stomach, because in his zeal, he's accidentally let slide a few of his memories. I see his first kill at just 4 years old, hunting with his father in the streets of Quebec. The elderly homeless man bundled up in a doorway, the pale, mottled flesh of his throat, the profound hunger, 1,000 times stronger than any I've ever experienced, an insatiable need. The man awakens and finds himself immobilized by Volkov's father. Fear pours out of him in a thick stench. His final thoughts are filled with deep regret. He's struggled so hard for so long, endured so much, and survived on so little, only to meet his end as some night creature's meal. And little Volkov loves it. Every drop of remorse, every pitiable whimper, every dream. He feeds on them along with the blood, gorges on the man's life force until he's full as a tick. And his father says simply, "Good." I see his most recent kill from earlier in the night. Stephanie Albright, the student who made the Faraday cage. He broke into her dorm and drained her in her sleep. She died and never saw it coming. Volkov looks at me now. He knows that I know. "Don't," he warns. I jam the ballpoint pen into his chest. My aim is perfect. It lodges between the ribs slightly, to the left of his sternum, and hits something hard, catching when he takes a breath. He growls at me. "I told you that wouldn't work." Then I'm soaring through the air. My body collides with the quantum camera, shattering it against the wall. I land in a heap on the floor, sparks raining down around me. Pain shoots up my spine, the wind knocked out of me. Volkov is on top of me in seconds, his weight like a 1,000-ton hydraulic press. There is no further possibility of fighting back. "Do it then," I hiss at him. I will not be like the man in the streets. I will not go to my death without dignity. If he's going to eat me, let him taste nothing but pure hatred. "Do it, you fucking parasite." He flinches again. I feel his emotions fan out in a kaleidoscope of rage, disappointment, and woe, beneath which is a childlike longing for my approval. He can't hide it now that I've seen it. His need for recognition that washes over me in waves. It's nearly as overwhelming as his hunger, an insecurity born of being raised with no mother. "We could have done important work together," he says, voice choked with repudiation. Remember that. Then he's gone. His presence peels away like a bad dream. The overhead lights turn on. "Dr. Chande?" asks Officer Thompson. He's standing in the doorway, holding a nightstick. The school won't let him carry a gun. "Everything okay in here?" Shakily, I get to my feet and survey the damage to the lab. Other than the broken camera, all the equipment is intact. There's no sign Volkov was ever here, except for the image on my laptop. "I'm okay, officer," I say. But we need to send the local police to Stephanie Albright's dorm room. There's been a homicide. Gripping his stick closer, Thompson asks, "How do you know that?" I stare at the screen. Its spray pattern of photons in a vaguely humanoid shape. The world's first evidence of the supernatural. But it could be anything. No better than a UFO sighting or a blurry photograph of Bigfoot in the woods. I clear my throat and glance at the officer. In the wake of Volkov's influence, my emotions come flooding back with a vengeance. Hot tears spill down my face. I clear my throat and remind myself, no matter what I experience, I am a scientist. Call it a hunch, O unholy night. Iceland's winter festivities are a perfect excuse to feast and make merry, and I partake with an insatiable appetite. I adore the endless nights wandering abroad and relish chance encounters with hapless stragglers trudging home. They all laugh when I tell them, carol singings not to my taste, and chuckle when I say, choristers are delightful and sweet. But how their mirth dissolves as I envelop them in my cloak and whisper, "What a toothsome treat you are. You're good enough to eat." I despise summer, like all cold-blooded creatures, preferring a catatonic sleep to roasting in the sun. Every autumn, I anticipate the evening when Ingvar disturbs my estivation, and I return to a nocturnal lifestyle. He disinters my casket from the family plot every year during the first week of December. It's a tradition my loyal retainer has followed for years, just like his father, and his father's father, ad infinitum. It's impossible to find reliable help these days. And so, despite Ingvar's poor social skills, I re-employ his services annually. Ingvar obeys my written orders to the letter on the pain of death. If not in this life, then his neck. Thwack, crunch. My mind basks in a dream state when Ingvar invades my solitude, hacking through the ice-bound earth above. Crake, skreek. I hear the shovel scrape debris off the wooden lid, and his doleful voice murmuring a tuneless refrain. The unsettling melody stirs my clouded mind like a moorland breeze whistling through gnarled branches. Its clashing dissonances offend my refined musical sensibilities and cause my heart to quiver and contract. Lub, dub, lub, dub, lub, dub. My constricted arteries dilate as Ingvar wrenches at the coffin nails with his claw hammer. His frenzied efforts cause minor explosions in the darkness, dusting the threadbare silk lining with clouds of grit. As Ingvar prizes open the ancient pine lid, my sensitive eyeballs roll upwards, avoiding the moon's inquisitive gaze. My rib cage twitches in a violent spasm as wheezing lung sacs inhale clean air. I choke and splutter, before coughing out stale fumes that rasp my withered throat like a rusty file. With each heartbeat, blood churns throughout my aching body, carrying oxygen to every cell. It's always the most painful part of my awakening. Pins and needles prickle each desiccated sinew, and every limb screams as it receives life-giving fluid. The blood returns to the heart after delivering oxygen, and my mind explodes with predatory thoughts anew. My throbbing heart sends the blood to lungs that strain hard to collect more air. I reflux and retch a pint of sticky phlegm from deep down. Ingvar is used to this unsightly reaction and tends to the detritus with a clean cloth. His caring touch is delicate and professional, and his face is unflinching. He lacks any sentiment. This is his business. Ingvar had strict instructions prior to my exhumation. He was to source a flask of fresh blood by whatever means necessary. The task never varies, but the source depends whereabouts I resume my existence. We're never in the same town twice, for obvious reasons. He's learned to adapt to my circumstances with undeniable efficiency. Ingvar has my best interests at heart, and he's also on the payroll. This winter season, he's moored our vessel in a quiet northwestern harbor outside Sudavik. It's an unassuming fishing town with a medical center and a venue for blood donors. Once on shore, he disguised himself and liberated a quart from their supply. It's a rich-looking concoction that will suffice for now. However, it's not the same as sinking my teeth into a warm jugular and slurping on the real deal. Ingvar steadies my quivering hands as I raise the glass container to my lips. I close my weary eyelids, and after a few sips, everything calms down. My sweaty palms dry out, and my prune-like fingers appear to elongate as my skin tightens. The sagging flesh under my jaw disappears, and my furrowed brow loses its careworn lines. At last, the throbbing pain behind my eyeballs dissipates, and my labored breathing settles into a regular rhythm. My once erratic heart beat chugs at a steady rate, and the queasiness in my stomach eases after a discharge of rancid gas. My rejuvenation is complete, and I rise from the coffin to assume my full height, like a magnificent butterfly casting off its shriveled chrysalis and unfurling its wings before flight. I nod at my retainer, and he tips his forelock and bows. I acknowledge his endeavors with a satisfied smile and survey the snowbound nightscape, glistening like an ocean of diamonds under the moon's bashful glow. Ingvar wafts his left hand through the air, shepherding me towards the waiting Broham with his outstretched right arm. Two majestic black drays snort white plumes from flared nostrils beside my handsome carriage. We take our seats as pristine snowflakes descend and settle on the bodywork's polished ebony. It's a fine welcome and a tremendous relief to be undead once more. The sight of my baleful old vehicle cantering through the small coastal town of Sudavik draws little attention. In previous years, the ominous rumble of hooves and creaking coach springs would herald an unfamiliar guest. But the inhabitants have other issues this year. They've entombed themselves within their homes, battened down their pine window shutters, and laced their thresholds with wreaths of protective herbs, ensuring plenty of garlics on hand. It should flatter me they fear the visit of a malevolent nocturnal predator. However, the precautions aren't for my sole benefit. The coronavirus's arrival has influenced behavior, and the government has enforced a lockdown. Ingvar understood there were unusual circumstances this year, but thought it prudent to interrupt my deep slumbers regardless. My initial reaction was one of joy. What better return could I expect than to discover piles of bodies waiting to be devoured? However, it transpires that the Health and Safety Department has issued an edict. Local undertakers are to dispose of the corpses through the crematorium. The local council is determined to sanitize the town and cleanse the region. I hadn't connected the hazy fog lingering above the coastline with the current climate of dread. Sudavik's furnaces are working overtime to dispose of the deceased. The impact on my festive plans is catastrophic. Citizens locked away in their homes until further notice. No bodies languishing on mortuary slabs waiting for morticians, and funerals performed in secrecy with the bereaved attending by Zoom. None of these scenarios bode well for a creature of my particular inclinations. I'll need to redraft Ingvar's commands with caveats that cater to similar events. A do not resuscitate clause should cover matters in the future. As for now, we'll retreat to the mountains, and I'll ponder the options. Iceland's 13 days of celebrations leading up to Christmas are a disaster for all the residents. Children won't be leaving shoes beside their open bedroom windows. There'll be no trolls gifting trick-or-treats this year. The authorities have banned the Yule lads' nightly visits. It's a bleak prospect all round. I have some tough decisions to make as we ascend to my mountaintop fortress. Most years, I'd prowl along local shores, searching for lonesome visitors and lost souls. My spirit descends into a quagmire as I contemplate the prospect of scouring isolated fjords for bilious vagrants and ill-kempt vagabonds. It seems unlikely that I'll quench my thirst this winter. The locals have barricaded themselves in their homes, and according to Ingvar, they're low on stock at the blood bank. As the days trickle past, the wind howls like a wounded banshee, and the ground hardens to rock. The snows gather in drifts, blocking our descent and jeopardizing my strategic movements. Ingvar spends his days grooming the horses, and at night he sips his supplies of Brennivin. Most evenings he passes out from its effects, having buried himself under a mountain of furs. He knows his services are not required during these hard times, despite being primed to chauffeur me down the mountain on a whim. I've endured centuries of this existence. Life is relative, of course. It isn't a life most know. It's punishment for cheating death. Centuries of endless torture in purgatory. I'm cursed to roam forever, fearful of daylight, and all for a few drops of blood. I suppose it could be worse. There's a contagious disease in the vicinity. I guess it'd just be my luck if I contracted the coronavirus, wouldn't it? A year of coughing and wheezing inside my casket is inconceivable. The thought is most unappealing. And so, it's time to call it a night. Ingvar must enter my coffin until the epidemic's over. Maybe my luck will improve next year. Elf off the shelf. From the beginning, there had only ever been one rule. Don't let anyone see you move. But after what I saw tonight, I was afraid I was going to have to break that rule. The Duncans' house was full of people. From inside Mrs. Mitchell's purse, I carefully peeked out through the open zipper and saw dozens of recognizable faces. People who had come over to pick up Oliver and Squier's friends over the years. They were all laughing and eating and drinking merrily. Despite Christmas having already passed. This I knew, because Mrs. Mitchell had already put me away for the season, which made it even more exciting when she had come back to retrieve me again so soon. Everyone was dressed festively in gold, green, and red. The Christmas tree was still brightly shining, and stockings still hung on the mantel above a lit fireplace. Jingle tunes buzzed across the room, and the smell of spiced cider simmered about. As I scanned the festive room, delighting in all its magic, I spotted a familiar face. But it was not just any face. No. This face looked quite like mine. So much like mine. In fact, I was certain it was mine. But was it possible? Another one of us had been granted access to such an exclusive event after Christmas? What were the odds? It took all my training and discipline, much like the effort I'd put forth when Mr. Mitchell accidentally dropped me in the toilet a few years back, not to call out and wave to my North Pole brother. Our mission had always been deemed a solo one. We'd known from the start that once we were sent off, it would be unlikely for us to see another of our kind again. Instead of calling out, I admired my fellow soldier for his composure and his stillness. His Mr. and Mrs. had him out for all to see. Not that we weren't used to being put on display. That was a rather big part of our job. But never had any of us, so I'd thought, been brought to an event like this. I imagined he was as gleeful and giddy about the whole thing as I was, but from where I watched, you'd never be able to tell. The sign of a strong soldier, indeed. Suddenly, a loud clinking sound echoed through the room. With a tap, tap, tap of his glass, Mr. Duncan had silenced the bustling crowd. "Good evening, everyone. I'm so delighted you're all here," he bellowed. "I'm pleased to welcome you to our 3rd annual Elf Off the Shelf ceremony, where we, dedicated and loving parents, get to liberate ourselves from this torturous and time-consuming holiday tradition, now that our children have outgrown their childish beliefs in the magic of Christmas." A loud cheer erupted across the room, but I didn't understand what they were cheering about. Liberate themselves? What holiday tradition? Tonight, we have 2 families who will be liberated: the Halberries and the Mitchells. Please give these lovely couples a congratulatory round of applause for their long years of shelving their elves. Another roar rose across the room, and it was then that I realized why Mrs. Mitchell had brought me here. Suddenly, I felt heavy. Heavier than I felt on the days when Mrs. Mitchell unboxed me, having grown stiff after months of storage. Heavier than Mr. Mitchell when he accidentally sat on me. I dropped down below the zipper of the purse, letting the darkness and the realization consume me. They've come to liberate themselves from me. But what did that mean? I heard Mr. Duncan start talking again, so I lifted my head up out of the zipper. "Would either of you like to go first?" Mr. Duncan stared toward Sarah Halberry on the other side of the room, and just as he was about to look in my direction, Sarah cried out, "I would!" Her hand was raised and flailing. Her enthusiasm stung, and I hoped Mrs. Mitchell would not be so thrilled to part from me. Surely, she wouldn't be, right? I snuck a peek at her face, but it was unreadable. Her eyes were glued on Sarah, who clutched my twin, Polly, between her fingers. Still, he did not flinch. What are they going to do with him? Chuckling at her enthusiasm, Mr. Duncan said, "Well, come on up here, darling. Bring old Polly with you for everyone to see." With Sarah now at Mr. Duncan's side, he began, "Well, Sarah, I can tell you're excited to get on with it. But we've got a few things to get through before we say goodbye to little Polly. Tell us, you dedicated how many years to this little guy? 17 years? Now, Sarah was holding Polly displayed on the palm of her hand, oscillating her arm from left to right to show the whole room his face. Whoa, 17 years? You must have started right when these little guys came out, huh? Sarah nodded proudly, but her eyes seemed to say something darker, nearly bulging out of her head. I sure did. Well, that's just fantastic. Really, really fantastic. So, let's see here. Huh? Can you tell me one of your favorite memories with Polly? Mr. Duncan asked. My favorite memory. Sarah stopped turning and pulled Polly closer to herself, inspecting him. I noticed her face soften as her memory scanned the past, and I couldn't help think about my own favorite memory with the Mitchells, remembering the time she moved me into the fridge. It had been a cold night in there, but when Oliver found me in the morning, clutching an empty pickle jar, his childish giggles warmed me right up. And when he and Schuyler told Mrs. Mitchell that I'd climbed into the fridge and ate all the pickles, Mrs. Mitchell pretended she knew nothing about it. That was the moment I fell in love with the Mitchell family. And that was why I was having such a hard time understanding why the Mitchells were planning to get rid of me. We were part of their families. Didn't they see that? I guess it would have to be the time I wrapped one of his legs with tissue paper and wrote a little sign next to him that said, "In recovery. I'll be healed in 3 days." Ugh, it was such a relief not to have to move him for half a week. The room exploded with more applause and cheering. I'd remembered when Mrs. Mitchell had done something similar, setting me up on a small towel underneath a houseplant. Her note had said that I was on a vacation and that I'd be back the next day. I'd appreciated the break. Having to hold still in all sorts of poses around the house is not exactly easy. But I'd thought she was doing it to relieve me, a kind reward for all my hard work. Very creative, Sarah. And those of us who are still shelving our elves certainly have a lot to learn from your innovative ideas, don't we? Now, care to indulge us in your worst memory with Polly? We like to end on a bad note, as it tends to make the final goodbye a little easier. Mr. Duncan chuckled. Something about the way he said "final goodbye" made me uncomfortable, and Mrs. Halberry's sinister smile only made me feel worse. The worst memory with Polly? I watched as she squeezed Polly in her hands, and it felt as if I were the one between her tense grip. Now that's easy. The pause in her words held the room nearly silent, save for the crackling of the fire. It was not like the magical silence of stockings waiting to be filled by Santa on Christmas Eve. Rather, it was full of darkness. I couldn't take my eyes off of Mrs. Halberry and poor Polly, so helpless in her hands, and then he wasn't in her hands anymore. I'd barely heard Mrs. Halberry say, "All of it," before I saw Polly soaring in midair towards the fireplace, his smile brightly intact as he was flung into the flames. I watched, speechless, horrified, trembling, as Polly landed amidst the blazing inferno. The fire popped and bloomed as it devoured him, engulfing his hat and body instantly in vicious heat. My eyes begged me to make it stop, but I couldn't look away. I wanted to scream, "No!" and to leap out of Mrs. Mitchell's purse and lunge to Polly's rescue, but I was frozen in my terror. Why was nobody doing anything? Why did nobody stop that wretched Mrs. Halberry? How could they let? That's when the sounds of celebration finally registered. They were cheering. They were whooping and hollering. I peeked a glance at Mrs. Mitchell and almost fainted at the sight of her. She was clapping, smiling even. What was this party of horror? Who was this woman I had dedicated my existence to? This was certainly not the Mrs. Mitchell I knew. This was, "Well done," Mr. Duncan guffawed, patting Mrs. Halberry on the shoulder. "Guess you were too eager to wait for the formalities, huh, Sarah? Feels good, doesn't it?" She was jumping up and down and clapping next to him, a smile as grand as a child's on Christmas morning. Monster. She was a monster. All right, dear. The whole party thanks you for your contribution and your entertainment. Why don't you go join Paul? And we'll invite the Mitchells up here for their liberation, shall we? If my heart had been working, it wasn't anymore. I dropped back into Mrs. Mitchell's purse, unsure if I had the discipline to conceal my terror. Somewhere inside me, I knew the truth, but I couldn't fight my denial from at least trying. Would the Mitchells really kill me? Mrs. Mitchell's hand found me and pulled me from my dark haven. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. Not like how it does on Christmas to assist Santa's impossible task, but like the sensation of fear, where every minute movement and sensation feels important because you're unsure if it will be your last. I had hoped all of it would be revealed as a dream, but as I rose out from the zipper, I saw the same malevolent faces, all of them staring hungrily in my direction. I'd had no context for such evils, had not even fathomed such perversities could exist around Christmas. And yet, there I was, the target of a ruthless and angry mob of parents. Mrs. Mitchell was quicker and peppier than I'd expected her to be, scurrying towards the front of the fireplace, eager for her turn at murderous betrayal. I did the only thing I knew how to do, the only thing I'd been trained to do. I remained still, sitting poised and cheerful in her hands as she showed me off to the pack of wolves like a sliced Christmas ham. "This is Skipper. We got him when our oldest was 2.5, so he's been a tradition in our home for nearly 14 years. I was so relieved when Skylar told me she no longer cared for the stupid thing." Gasp. What an awful thing to say. Carla told me about this little ceremony she conjured up a few years ago, and since then, I just couldn't wait for my day to come. A murmur was rising in the crowd when Mr. Mitchell made his way to Mrs. Mitchell's side. He wrapped his arm around her waist and said, "Oh, come on, dear. You're not even a little sad about it. It's the end of an era." People snickered, and Mr. Mitchell's smile grew wide. I recognized his joking tone, but now it felt like pure mockery. It made me wish I'd never forgiven him for leaving me in the bathroom that day. Mrs. Mitchell tilted her head in consideration and placed a hand on Mr. Mitchell's face. "Aw, honey, there's a lot about the kids being little that I'll miss, but this isn't one of them. Maybe if you'd been more helpful." She pinched his cheek, and they both giggled like mischievous beasts plotting their most vile acts. "I helped," Mr. Mitchell defended. This time, it was mostly just the men in the room who laughed. "You moved him twice in 14 years. They were great hiding places," Mrs. Mitchell scoffed. "The toilet is not what I consider a great place, Sam." "Okay, that time didn't count. I brought him to the bathroom with me and forgot about him. More to my point, you weren't helpful?" Mrs. Mitchell pecked Mr. Mitchell on the lips. "It's okay. I still love you. But you'll forgive me for being a little excited to not have to do this anymore." Mr. Duncan slung an arm around Mrs. Mitchell's shoulder. "All right, you two. I can see you're just as eager as Sarah was, so should we get on with it then? We know Skipper's name, and I'm assuming your worst memory with him was this, toilet incident. Is that right, Sam? Are there any good memories with Skipper you care to share before your final goodbye?" Lifeless in her hands, I willed her to remember all our good times together. They had to have been real to her. They had to have meant something, the way I know they meant something, not just to me, but to Skylar and Oliver. Remember their little faces, lit up each morning at the surprise of my new location. Remember how happy they were when Thanksgiving ended because they knew I would arrive soon. I'd brought joy to them for 14 years. How was it possible that they could throw me away? Well, there was one thing. Mrs. Mitchell's voice trailed off. I felt her grip loosen slightly, and a sparkle of hope twinkled in my soft, fluff-filled belly as she turned me in her hands to face her. Lifting me up to her eye level, she stared directly into mine, and I saw 1,000 memories swirling around her glistening green eyes. I'd always thought they looked like the most beautiful holiday wreaths in the world. I'd admired them so many times, but this time I begged her to return the favor. Which moment was she remembering now? The time I mowed the lawn? Or the time I built a gingerbread house and ate part of the roof? Whatever point in our past it was, I wondered if it would be enough to change her mind about all of this. Oh, never mind. All of it was just silly, and I'm so relieved to be done with it. Yeah! The crowd cheered, and my heart sank lower than the thermostat at the North Pole. She was really going to go through with it. What was I going to do? I heard Mr. Duncan spouting off more jokes, and I knew I was losing time. If I didn't do anything soon, I was about to be tossed into the fireplace alongside my now molten friend, Polly. Poor Polly. Had he even an inkling of what his fate had in store for him? Had he loved and trusted the Halberries as I had loved and trusted the Mitchells? I had not known him well, but I'd like to believe that if he'd had any idea about what they were going to do to him, he would have done something to stop it, even if it meant breaking the number one rule. I was still gazing into Mrs. Mitchell's eyes when I saw her lips beginning to form the words, "Goodbye." It was then that I decided I wouldn't let this happen. It was then that I broke my stillness. I leaned forward and slapped her across the face. "How dare you?" I huffed, and the sound of my own voice shocked me, for it had been many years since I heard it. I thought we were family, but families don't burn other members of their family, with my voice being so high-pitched and quiet. It took a moment for everyone to realize what was happening. But once they saw Mrs. Mitchell's face, frozen in an expression of horror, the room fell deathly silent. "Skipper?" Mrs. Mitchell breathed, but by then, I was already out of her hands. I jumped up onto the fireplace mantel and raced across it. I grabbed a hold of some tinsel garland and flew myself across the room towards the Christmas tree, grateful that this one still had its star-shaped tree topper. I remembered long, long ago when Santa had warned us that if we'd ever had an emergency, it was the tree toppers that could quickly transport us to safety. The fear that they might catch me fueled my speed, and quickly I climbed through the branches, the ornaments, and the string of lights all the way up to the top, feeling every single malicious eye searing through my back. Once I finally reached the top, I was breathless. I turned to face the room of malevolent demons and realized my fear had been unwarranted. None of them had moved an inch since I'd sprang into action. Every single one of them was frozen, mouth agape, and staring, as petrified as I had been, watching from within Mrs. Mitchell's purse. I even saw Sarah peek towards Polly's ashen remains in the fireplace. I scanned the faces of them all, and when I landed on the Mrs. Mitchell, I narrowed my eyes. "You owe Schuyler and Oliver a jar of pickles," I said. Then I placed my hand on the glistening star atop the Duncans' Christmas tree, and like a sudden stroke of magic, it was I who was finally liberated. Diary of a Serial Killer. How might one endure the silent and secluded nature of winter? Be the bear. Enter a deep cave and dream, dream, dream. Jacqueline Suskin. I probably shouldn't be writing this, but oh fucking well. When the most precious thing lodged in your heart is ripped out and crushed by an unthinking alcoholic asshole driving with a revoked license, you do things, unimaginable things, and not just burying your beloved 8-year-old son, which was not on my shitty life bingo card, OVS, but life wasn't shitty before. The word should be capitalized. Before. No, better yet, the before, because now life was rent in two, forever separated by the gaping maw of rage. The before and the after, a fissure of overwhelming grief that quickly cracked, allowing the steaming, boiling lava to emerge from her core. Oh, he would pay. That drunken dickhead. His money won't protect him. Not from me. They gave her the code name Mama Bear. But he never imagined that she was holed up in a cave. On a hunch, he came out to the Pennsylvania woods at night. Alone. Common sense and the FBI handbook would label his actions reckless at best and suicidal at worst. But he didn't fear for his safety. Mama Bear targeted a certain type of prey. Except for being a male, he didn't fit her profile. Funny. They were both profilers. October snuck up behind him, picking up the crisp air, tossing it around. Playing offense, it switched tactics, threw it toward his face, temporarily snatching his breath. He continued to climb, quiet crunching under his boots, allowing the patches of clearing and the light of the frosted full moon to guide his steps. He'd reach the cave no matter what, so the easy way was the best way. He put his hand in his front pocket, felt the crumpled page of a diary. The paper crinkled like the fallen leaves underfoot. It was mailed to him at his office. This one, and the other entries. He had the sense to turn in the others, but not this one. Well, most of the others. She vowed to herself that she would abstain from killing for a month. Or so she wrote. By his accounts, it was day 30. He hoped her undated entry referred to October. At least he would have a day, one day. It was easier than I thought. I would say too easy. But that motherfucker mowed down my baby like a shirtless, beer-bellied jickoff hurrying to cut the grass before the Buccos game. Maybe it shouldn't be hard. Justice shouldn't be hard. Not in the semblance of a fair world. Leaves skittered and scurried around his legs, tumbling over each other like playing squirrels. He stopped, inhaled deeply. He loved the smell of fall, that last exhale of trees mixing with ripe decomposition. I'm so glad I live in a world of Octobers. He smiled at the memory of his sister, quoting Anne Shirley. Not so long ago. His smile fell. Not so long ago yet, forever ago. Tragedy has a way of altering time, elongating some parts and compressing others. He looked up through the lattice of bare limbs, a web of gnarled fingers, the indigo sky stitched with rhinestones. Did the stars foretell it? It was the mutable signs of the zodiac: Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, BTK. Dahmer, Bundy. The ones born at the end of a season, not in the middle, like the fixed signs. Like Scorpio. Like her, you'd think one was enough. But it wasn't. I realized AA, alcoholic asshole, was just one of many. Sure, I settled my score. But what of the other moms? So many. Blights, diseases walking the earth, infecting others with their cruelty, their carelessness, their capriciousness. Someone had to bring order, just like Melville Dewey did to book classification. So in 99, he considered turning around to walk back down the hill. He turned, but didn't move. In the distance, the twinkling lights of downtown Pittsburgh weaved a terrestrial constellation of bridges, one-way traffic, and sundry skyscrapers. The Steel City, just like its people. Metal backbones, gritty guts, and honest hearts. He craved a sandwich from Primanti's. Any sandwich. That was the last time he saw her. At Primanti's, the original one, he wasn't one to second-guess himself. His mom drummed it into their heads from the cradle. Trust self first, last and only. First, last, only. Thanks to the internet and social media, it's not hard to find someone or their misdeeds. What was once relegated to a diary like this is now vomited onto Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for all to see. Many lap it up, probably because it makes them feel less uncomfortable about their own stupid decisions and meaningless lives. Here for the mindless braggart. Many blowhards make for less research when it comes to this side gig. He cracked his neck, onward and upward, one foot in front of the other, crunching leaves, whipping wind, snapping twigs. Up, up, up he climbed. He was getting close. His hand reached towards his front pocket. Again, he read the page dozens of times, just like the rest. He couldn't help it. Just touching the decal-edged diary page brought clarity and understanding. He had to find her first. Could it be that easy? I think this might be my last entry. I knew it was a bad idea. No, make that bad idea to write things down. But writers write. Fish swim, birds fly, dogs bark. Writers write. And mama bears? Well, unless you're bent from birth, looking at you, mutable signs. No one sets out to be a killer. Or, as I like to differentiate, a remover. Scrooge, Dickens, had it partly right. Decrease the surplus population. He just needed to add of assholes. Decrease the surplus population of assholes. Dangerous, foul, hollow assholes. He neared the ridge. He was getting close. He pulled out the wrinkled diary page. He couldn't help it. The moon illuminated the page, but he couldn't make out the words. Strange glyphs, occultic squiggles, just like those found on the astrological charts she used to interpret. Meaningless symbols to the untrained eye, but metaphysical gold to the mystic. He didn't need to be able to read the entry. He had it memorized, the cave. He could see the entrance. Dark, yawning, an inky maw, just like her rage. He reached into the other pocket for his flashlight. She beat him to it. Her flashlight shone on the ground ahead so as not to blind him. "Hey, sis. Hey, bro. What took you so long? General." My eyes fly open, like I'm waking from the dead. I start up, tossing aside the blanket that had been tangled around my legs. Something woke me up. I kick dirty laundry out of the way and shift my body to sitting up, head swimming. The sunlight is too bright in the room, and I find myself squinting around. When I lean forward, my phone tumbles off my lap, hits the edge of the coffee table, and clatters to the floor. I wince. Shh. I hiss at it. Why is that so loud? It echoes through the whole house. I look down at the dark phone, way far away on the floor, and can't convince my arms to swing down to grab it. What's the point? So I can open it up and do what? I breathe in, smelling the stale smell of the old blankets wrapped around me in a cocoon. And because there's nothing better to do, breathe out again. I can feel stiffness in my stomach from the surgery, the stitches stretching with my skin. I'm hungry. I should haul myself to my feet, drag myself into the kitchen, and find something to eat. I try to imagine doing all of that, standing up, moving, opening the fridge, getting out ingredients, putting things in a bowl. I swing my head to the right. There's my water bottle. I can drink some water. I try to force my brain to imagine telling my husband, when he gets home from work, what I did today. I drank some water from my water bottle. I breathed in, and I breathed back out. I decided to keep breathing in and keep breathing out, because it was easier than not doing that. I look down at my right arm, and because it would be embarrassing if I can't even manage that, I lift my arm, pick up my water bottle with fingers made of lead, and swallow some water. I have been back from the hospital almost a week after my ordeal, and somehow swallowing water is still the most I can manage. The TV is on, and there's a very serious news lady droning on. She's talking about the spread of the virus, and there's a map with splotches of red. I don't want to listen to this, to see the red slowly seeping into our state, getting closer and closer to us. I want it to be quiet. She's talking so loud, she needs to be quiet. But I don't know where the remote is, and I don't know if I can remember which buttons to press. I lean my head back and think about going back to sleep. But if I go back to sleep, at some point, I'll be woken up again. And then what? Once, I liked waking up in the morning, greeting the fresh world and whatever the day held. Now, after what happened, when my eyes open, I just wonder when I can shut them again. I don't have to feel hungry when I'm sleeping, and don't have to worry about finding something to eat. Thump. There's a thump on the porch steps. My eyes trace past the cluttered living room, past the TV, out the window, and as he moves, I catch a glimpse of him. There's a zombie climbing the porch steps. I start to stand. Sharp pain shoots through my stomach. I stiffen and pause. Is that pain new? I don't remember it from yesterday. I leverage with my arms, stiff and sore, and haul myself to my feet. I kick at one sock that's slowly coming off my foot and shuffle around the pile of laundry to get to the window. Surely I saw something else. Right? I'm sure I didn't see a zombie. The lady on the news is saying to be very, very careful. She's saying that the virus spreads not just from the bite, but that it's in the water supply too. She's impressing on us how dangerous it is, because everyone knows that zombies are incapable of hurting other zombies. That's why it's spreading so fast. I reach the window and stop. My arms are limp at my sides, and I can feel the lopsided bun on my head slowly falling out. There's something damp on my sweatshirt. What did I spill on my sweatshirt? Outside the window, I see him. He's climbing the porch steps. He's lifting one foot, and he's looking down at it. Then he's dropping it. Thump. Onto the step. He's lifting the next foot. He's looking at it. Then he's dropping it. Thump. I take a step back. He's an old man. A stranger I don't know, with stringy gray hair and mottled green skin. The brass buttons on his moldy wool coat still shine in the sunlight. Looking at them makes one half of my head ping with pain. His fingers are curled into claws. His face is gnarled into a wince, his teeth slimy and yellowed. I turn away. Thump. He's a step closer. I turn again. On the floor of the living room is a bath towel. Oh, that's why my shirt is wet. I took a shower this morning. I start to move, pushing my feet forward. One, then the next, then the other again. I reach for the doorway to the kitchen. Like, if I can find it with my fingers, I can draw myself through the doorway faster than my feet can move me. Why are my feet so slow? I kick the bath towel out of the way. It's still damp, like my sweatshirt. What do? I say, careful to keep my voice low. I'm somewhat surprised to hear my own slurred speech. Who am I talking to? What do? What was the plan? Was there a plan? My brain tried to slog through the past day to remember the plan. I remember my husband this morning. He was leaving the house to go to work, I think. He must have been, because he was wearing his jacket and was standing in the doorway. And I was sitting on the couch, heavy-armed and tired. And he'd told me. What had he told me? The same thing he told me every day. Do something for yourself today. Just one thing. I must have said something back, because he smiled at whatever it was. One specific thing. I reach the kitchen doorway. That's why I took the shower. I remember now. That was something for myself. Thump. The newest thump was so much louder than the others that I grasped the kitchen doorway to keep myself from falling. A needle of pain wriggled through my abdomen. Quiet, I hiss toward the front porch. The zombie had made it up the steps and is at the door. I can see his shadow through the window as he leans heavily on the door. Thump. He hammers again. Shh, I say desperately. He needs to be quiet. Doesn't he know he needs to be quiet? I start to draw myself around the kitchen island, one hand over the other, guiding my stiff body. It's not as bright in here, and I can see better. My eyes fumble over old takeout containers and empty water bottles, and the sink piled high with dishes. Piled so high with dishes. Before I went to the hospital, I would have never let it get this bad. The gloves I usually use to wash the dishes are 1,000 miles away, down on the floor by several pairs of socks. Thump, crack, creak, creak. I stop, my hands placed on the kitchen counter, holding me still. I know that creak. It is a sound that washes over me every evening and fills me with relief. Why? Why do I love that sound? Now, it's the sound of the door opening as the zombie walks into my house. The zombie is walking into my house. No, oh no, I whisper and look around the dim kitchen. Where's my phone? It's in the living room. Thump, thump. Footsteps in the living room, and I hear a ragged, rancid breath. Suddenly, my hands let go of the kitchen counter, and I'm moving, my feet carrying me, careening through the house, stumbling, unmoored, out into the hall and across, and into the dark, dark bathroom. The door shuts behind me, and I blink once and again and again. Images of the spinning rooms spiraling in my vision before settling into the dark outline of the bathroom. Sink, toilet, empty toilet paper rolls, trash overflowing, and from down the hall, from the living room, I hear a voice. I can hear you in here. No one ever told me they talk. The zombie's voice drips under the bathroom door, snaking up my leg and draining into the pit of my stomach. His speech is slow and meticulous, his dead mouth trying to remember how to form words. You are breathing, the voice says. You are breathing so slow. Why are you breathing so slow? Why am I? I can't think. I can't make my brain think. All I can see when I close my eyes and remember is my husband standing in the doorway, looking at me. Why is he looking at me like that? Full of pity? Why is he speaking to me so slowly? Do one thing, he says, the words echoing in my sluggish mind. Do one specific thing, just for you. I did what he said. I look at the bathtub. I took a shower. A few water droplets are still dripping down from the shower head. I move forward, leaving the bathroom door. I hear heavy footsteps moving so slowly through the house behind me. I need to tell the zombie to walk quieter. He needs to be quiet. I hold out a hand, and I shiver as a cold water droplet splashes into my palm. I can barely see it in the dark, but my heart starts to sink, slowly, dropping from my chest down into my stomach, where slow, steady panic is building just under my ribcage. Why am I full of dread? Why does the water on my skin make me feel sick? Why can't I move fast enough to get to safety? My brain used to be smart and quick. Now it isn't. I'm never going to be quick again. I will find you. I jump as the voice sounds again. This time, closer. He's just across the hall in the kitchen. He's looking at the sink full of dirty dishes. I yank my hand out of the shower like it's a fire and start moving again, letting my feet stumble and rush. My hand fumbles on the doorknob and the door swings open, and I see a shadow cutting across the floor of the hall. I've lost a sock, and my feet stamp. 1, 2, 1, 2, down the hall. I pass a closed bedroom door on my way. Shh. I need to be quiet. Stop being so loud. Why are you running? The rasping voice grates through the house. I can feel you. You're tired. You want to sleep. I reach the basement stairs, and I stop. To my left, the back door of the house, leading out into the overgrown backyard, and the bright sunlight dappling on the grass and flowers. I think I can smell the fresh grass and perfume of the flowers, even from here. And to my right, the rickety basement stairs, leading down into moldy darkness. You don't want to escape. Where is there to escape to, anyway? My feet are stuck to the floor. I can't run. I look down at my hand, damp from the water from the shower, and I remember that I took that shower for me, and that when I was done, I sat on the toilet in my towel, shivering and shaking, and I didn't feel better, and my ears were ringing with screaming, and my head was aching, and my stomach was twisting, and I was tired. I told them at the hospital I was so tired, and they sent me home anyway. It's all I can think anymore, and no amount of warm showers make me feel better. Why not? I can't seem to feel better. I'm tired. I turn away from the back door, and my feet drop onto the basement steps. I hear him behind me. Thump, thump. He's following. My feet hit the basement steps. Thump, thump. He's following. I reach out, raking my fingers along the concrete walls, balancing my stumbling legs and feet. Where are my feet? Where did I leave them? Oh, they're here. Right underneath me. I reach the cold floor of the basement and step over a puddle at the base of the steps. And I pass the light switch on the wall. I can see from the pale light that shines in through the small windows. Bins and boxes piled up where I left them, half open and spilling their contents on the floor. That was from before, when I cared about organization and neatness. Now, I can't even look at them. That's right, the croaking voice says. It's coming from the top of the stairs. It's grinding down the wood steps and splashing onto the concrete floor. Go down into your grave. Go down to drown alone. You do not want to walk back up again. My fingers trail along the dusty top of a box, then the edge of a bookshelf loaded with cans of beans and tomatoes and vegetables. My glazed eyes trail over the rows of cans, and I have to blink myself awake. I used to be different. I used to be awake. After what happened, whatever else there is, it's like I'm gone. I have to press a hand to my stomach, holding in my stitches and my guts even to walk. I miss the person I used to be. My feet shuffle along, 1 foot warm, 1 foot cold, 1 sock on, 1 sock off. I weave my way through the old bikes and laundry baskets to where the washer and dryer are crouching in the corner. I can hear his loud feet on the steps. One thing, one specific thing, just for me. I want to scream, to fill my lungs and holler as loud as I can, but instead it comes out as barely a whisper. Be quiet, I hiss. You need to be quiet. My hands rest, 1 on the washer, 1 on the dryer. I pause. I need to remember how to use my knees. I look down, and I remember, and bend, twisting at the waist, and bending my creaking knees all the way down until I'm on the floor. It's damp down here, water trickling in through the cinder blocks and oozing through the cracks in the floor. I place 1 hand on the cold floor, the water stinging my fingers with how cold it is. I reach behind me with the other hand. He's on his way down the steps. The steady thump, 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 echoing through the house. He's going faster because he knows. He knows why I came down here. Shh! Behind me, a dial on a metal safe clicks. Thump, thump, then splash. He reaches the puddle at the bottom of the stairs, and my eyes slowly look up, up. He's tall and broad-shouldered, and I can see, in the dim light, the glint of his yellow teeth gnashing together. His eyes narrow when he sees me. Click, click, the dial behind me. "There you are," he says, and he's moving, his hands bumping into dusty boxes and canned goods. I'm still crouching, and I can feel the water seeping into my sweatpants. I should be shivering, but I'm not. It feels almost warm. Warm like blood, like my blood, pumping through me, swift and sure. "Here you are," he says. The safe clicks open, and my hand closes over something familiar and solid. "You're hiding down here to be found," he says, an ugly smile curling his gray lips. I'm holding the familiar object in my hand, and his eyes land on it. The smile widens, his teeth grinding together, spit dripping out of his mouth and onto his moldy coat. I raise a shaking hand. I pull in breath, and I let it out again. "You can't do that," he says, his mouth fumbling over the words, spitting them out one at a time. He raises a crooked finger with a broken, bloody nail, pointing toward the ceiling and the floor above us. "If you do that, you won't be quiet. Don't you want to be quiet?" "I do want to be quiet. I want to curl up down here in the warm water and sleep, where I can't feel hungry, and my stomach and hips and back don't hurt, where my head doesn't ache." He must see my shoulders sag, because he takes a shuddering step forward. "You came down here to die." "No," I say, and my voice is louder than it should be. "One specific thing, just for me." I can feel my hands again as they raise the gun I'd pulled from the safe and level it at the zombie. His old, dead eyes don't change or look alarmed. "I'm here because I want to live." Bang, thump. Upstairs, in the bedroom I had skipped, suddenly startled awake, my newborn baby starts to cry. I look at the rows of canned goods, vegetables and beans and soup. I think it's time to cook some lunch. The gates of hell are open night and day, smooth the descent, and easy is the way. Virgil. They all just sat there in the heat, and they waited. The kid came back. He was walking down the platform with his head hung low, sweat running down his pimpled face, like always. He was 16, but looked more like 13, short and skinny, with longish dark hair and a black eye. The black eye was always there. It never faded. He took a seat at the end of the bench with the others and looked down at his dirty old sneakers. Roman. "Same shit, little man?" The kid. "Yeah." Roman. "I don't know why you even bother no more." They all just sat there in silence. Sandra. "It's so hot today." 3 of them looked at her. Roman. "Bitch, it's hot out here every day." Sandra. "I told you not to call me that." Colonel Duval. "Roman, please." Roman gave a tiny chuckle and pulled the pack of Newports from his pocket and lit one up. That pack was always near to full. He exhaled some smoke and looked down the tracks into the distance where the rails slowly bent off into the trees and out of sight. Sandra wrinkled her nose and waved the smoke away. Roman, man, when this train gonna come? Brian, why do you always ask that same question over and over? Roman, yo man, I already done told you to bite your tongue and stay over there, you strange ass bitch. Don't make me get up. It's too hot for me to whip your ass right now, you silly looking motherfucker. They all just sat there in silence. Colette fanned herself with the folded newspaper, looked down the tracks, and then handed it to the colonel, who did the same. Roman took one last drag on his cigarette and then flicked it at Brian seated at the end of the bench, bouncing it off his jeans and leaving a small horsetail of orange sparks in the air as it fell to the platform. Brian did not respond at all. Roman chuckled. The kid, I'm gonna take a walk. Roman, seriously, man? Again? Is you retarded? The kid, fuck off. I'm gonna take a walk. You can come with me if you want. Roman, nah, man. I'm good, shorty. You go off and wander. I'll be coolin' it right here when you get back. The kid walked off down the platform towards the exit stairs, giving Roman, or maybe all of them, the finger with his right hand held over his narrow shoulders as he departed, not looking back. As he passed the thermometer mounted on the wall, the temperature read 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Always 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Always. Colette, can someone remind me how he got here? I know he's told me, but I just can't remember. Sandra, me neither. They all just quietly sat there in the heat for a while, Roman looking down the tracks every minute or two. He lit another Newport from the bottomless pack. Colette and Sandra both squinted and waved the smoke away. Brian looked up at the sky. Brian, how come the sun never sets? Colette. Sandra, I forgot how you got here too. I know we've discussed this before, but I just can't seem to remember these things. Sandra, I came home from a business trip early one day and found the car that belongs to my husband's 24-year-old secretary blocking the driveway. When I entered the house, I could immediately hear the sounds coming from the bedroom. I went to the stove and blew out the pilot light and turned up the gas. Then I lit a few candles on the dining room table, left the house, and drove my car halfway down the block and watched as it went up in flames a little while later. It's sad that my baby Jason was there in his crib at the time, but I really didn't want to be a single mother. That was in 1972. What year is this? Colette. Oh, that's right. That's just awful. Roman. Yo, do y'all ever plan to shut the fuck up? Making my head hurt over here. Colonel Duval. Roman. I must politely ask you once again to mind your language when speaking with the women. Roman gave him an angry stare and then flicked his cigarette butt out onto the tracks and used his black bandana to wipe the sweat off his forehead. Brian, are we ever going to get any food? When is the food coming? I'm hungry. Colette, I don't think we can get food here. Sandra. Colette, I forgot how you got here too. What awful thing did you do? Please remind me. Colette gave her an aggrieved stare for a moment, and then revealed a broad smile and answered in a flowery and friendly tone that could not have been less sincere. Colette, I didn't do anything awful, Sandra. Nothing like what you did. Your own child, unthinkable. No. All I did was fulfill my Lord and Savior's will. When I was working in the hospital, if I saw in a patient's chart that she previously murdered an unborn child, well, I carried out God's will. I did this 6 times before they caught me. I wish it was 6,000. Sandra, I'm an atheist. Colette laughed during her brief reply. Colette, this is probably not the best place for you to cling to that silly notion, dummy. Sandra, go fuck yourself, Colette. They all went silent for a while. The heat was oppressive. There was no shade. There was no breeze. Brian, when are we going to get something to eat? Colonel Duval, son, I've been here far longer than any of you. I assure you there will be no meals served. Brian, well, we all need water. Will we get some water at some point? The colonel ignored this query. After a while, Roman spoke up. Roman, yo, old man, remind me how you got here. Colonel Duval, I was in the war. At Antietam, we captured some rebel soldiers and we needed information about troop locations, numbers, armaments, that sort of intelligence. We did things to them to ensure that we got that information quickly, but later, I was court-martialed, and they hanged my commanding officer and myself in Washington for our war crimes. It was quite the scandal at that time. Roman, Antietam? Where that at, man? Iraq? Colonel Duval, no, son, that's in Maryland. Can you please remind me how you got here? I'm sorry. My memory is not what it once was. Roman, shot a few niggas. Colonel Duval, excuse me, son? Can you repeat that? Roman, yeah, I shot a few niggas just down the block from where I stay in Washington Heights. I've been running that corner for 3 years, and one day these little bitches show up and just set up shop and start serving my customers. It wasn't something I had to think about much. Shit. I also hit a delivery man bringing some cases of beer into the bodega on that corner, but I didn't mean to do that. He was just in that wrong place at the wrong time. Then I shot it out with the NYPD. It was pretty quick. I caught a few in my back and one in my neck. Anyways, man, that's how I got here. He pointed at the scar on his neck and then lit another cigarette. The kid was walking back down the platform, his olive drab green U.S. Army t-shirt heavily stained with sweat. The thermometer read 117 degrees Fahrenheit, as always. Sandra, can someone remind me how he got here? I can't seem to remember these things for long, for some reason. Colette, I don't recall either, but I'm sure he didn't burn his child to death. Sandra shot an angry look back at her, scowled and looked away, crossing her arms over her chest. Roman looked down the tracks. Sandra, fuck you, Colette. Colette smiled, smugly. Roman, man, when this train gonna come? Sandra, I do feel really bad about my son, Jason. I just didn't know what else to do in that moment. That's why I drove to the bridge afterwards. The kid took a seat at the end of the bench. Sandra, hey kid, I'm sorry. Can you please remind us how you got here? The kid, I took my dad's pistol to school, and I shot a few bullies and this one asshole gym teacher. Then I shot myself. The kid never said very much. Roman, same shit, little man? The kid, yeah, I walked and ended up right back here, just like always. Felt like I was walking for 2 hours. Wish I had my iPhone. How long was I gone that time? Roman, I don't know, man. Maybe 4 or 5 minutes. You see anything new? The kid, number. It doesn't matter which way I go. It's just a long, empty road, and then I pass by an empty high school that looks just like mine, and then I end up back here. He stared down at his dirty old sneakers. Colette, maybe next time you should stop in that school and take some geography classes. She laughed at her own joke, and the kid shot her a grave look. Sandra did too. Sandra. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Hell is other people." I think he was right. Sandra crossed her arms over her chest and looked away. Colette. How did you get here, Brian? Brian, I already told you. I took 17 women between 1985 and 1992 before I was arrested. Mostly prostitutes. Then I was on death row down in Huntsville for about 14 years until I ran out of appeals. Are they going to bring us any food? They all went silent for a while and stewed in the heat of the brutal, unyielding sun. After a few minutes, Roman looked down the tracks. Roman, man, when this train gonna come? Colonel Duval, I wouldn't be in such a rush, son. Roman, oh yeah, why dat? Colonel Duval paused and looked at the tracks running off in the opposite direction, towards the desert, before looking back at Roman. Colonel Duval, well, son, we don't know where that train is going to take us, do we? He paused for another moment and stared off towards the desert again. He spoke without looking back this time. He spoke quietly. Colonel Duval, maybe this is the best part. What if it only gets worse from here? What if this is just the beginning? Roman lit another cigarette and then turned away and quietly stared in the other direction, down the tracks to the point where the rails bent off and disappeared beyond the trees. He exhaled, and the smoke drifted down the bench towards the others. They all sat there and waited for the train. Eventually, the kid took another walk and then returned a short time later, drenched in sweat. Brian remained hungry. Colette and Sandra refused to look at one another. The colonel had a solemn cast to his face, and Roman continued to reach into his endless pack of cigarettes. The temperature was 117 degrees Fahrenheit. They all just sat there in the heat, and they waited. The gingerbread cookies. The gingerbread cookies. Let's go downstairs and bake some cookies, like Mother used to make. The warm smell sits right at home in your nostrils, invading them like wild axe murderers, hacking and slashing their way through endless miles of human bodies that stand in the way of their inhumane, carnal desires. Shh, but that's too dark. It's Christmas, after all. So let's go downstairs and bake some cookies, like Mother used to make. One step, then two. Ooh, isn't this great? You've never baked gingerbread cookies before? Oh no, because you always thought that you would never be able to make them oh so good, like Mother used to. What did she say she made them with? Some kind of special ingredient. What was it? Was it sugar and spice and everything nice? Was it love? That special ingredient that every mother cooks with because you are their extra special little kid? Oh my, this is exciting. Your heart hammers against your rib cage as you set the oven to... Oh, you don't know what to set the oven to. You've never made these before. Probably 300 will be good. You bend down, spin the dial. But what's that? What the heck? There's already a baking tray in there. You take it out, confused. On it, there's a set of perfectly cut gingerbread men. They wear little black tuxedos with white buttons. Their smiles expose endless rows of sharpened, white teeth, and their wide green eyes watch you intently with their white pupils. In the center, one of them stares right at you, holding a folded-up note in its tiny dough hand. You snatch it from him, not caring about the little man's feelings. To my little boy, my, oh my, I can't believe how the years have passed. It seems like just yesterday that whatever secret deity governs this universe sent me to my untimely punishment beneath the earth's soil. I know, I was always so poetic, right? Now enjoy these cookies. I hope they taste just like how Mommy used to make. Love, Mother. Ding. Apparently, 10 minutes pass while you read that short letter. But to be fair, you don't read it once. Do you now? You read it time after time until the words start doing tangos in your head as they spin spiderwebs around one another. Now, after it dings, you're supposed to put the cookies back in and start the baking, Mother said. How hot do you bake them? You asked. Hot, very hot, Mother said. But don't they not like being so hot? Oh, these little guys won't mind at all, Mother said. She slid the tiny men into the 300-degree heat chamber. She smiled. There was really nothing to it. Nothing to it. Well, there's nothing to it, you think, as you slide the baking tray in, and as the minutes tick by, their faces change. No more are the artificial smiles plastered on by a woman who would ruthlessly murder them. Now are the faces of men who know their deaths are coming. Smiles that slowly flatten in the corners as 3 minutes turn to 4, 5 minutes to 6, until the red frosting of their mouths fall clean off, and they can't shout for help. Just as you couldn't call the ambulance when you're there, Mother started clutching her heart and breathing heavily, minutes after she slid the baking tray filled with small people into the oven for the final time, yelling for you to get the phone, to get up, to do something, and not just sit there as the people cooked in their torture chamber. And then they come alive. One of them pokes its head up, its blank eyes staring into your heart. It's lifeless, dull, unknowing of the infernal fire around it, like you on that fateful night, not knowing that Mother will soon be gone for good. It looks at you, and then it stands on its 2 stubby legs, stumbling as it gets up. It walks to the edge of the baking tray, carefully navigating around its still dead, unconscious friends as they lie down, their backs against the aluminum's sun-hot surface. It looks its friends in the eyes, and maybe it thinks, I'm sorry that I'm here and you're not, and then steps over the edge, falling down into the oven's fiery, incomprehensible bottom. Clunk. Mother? You asked, your body shaking all over. Why was she on the ground? Why were her eyes closed? She may have been asleep, for all you knew. Maybe she was. Maybe. And then they all stand up. They look like an army, all dressed in their uniform suits. One of them peers down and looks at its friend, all dismembered and burned on the oven's floor. It looks more like charcoal than a body. They form a single file line in the middle of the tray, a gingerbread snake, if you will. And one by one, each of them takes turns taking suicidal leaps off the edge. And one by one, you catch their faces as they take their fateful falls. Stop crying, kid, they all say. Mother will be okay. Clunk, clunk, clunk. The gingerbread charcoal pile grows and grows until it is a small mountain. In it, you see a face. Mother. And she smiles the gingerbread smile, looking at you. And you can't tell if it is a smile of relief or a smile of scorn. But it doesn't matter. Your mother's smile is the thing you have always wanted the most. And if this was the way you got it, then so be it. But that smile rang hollow, now devoid of any meaning, any life. An eternal reminder that mother is gone, and who's to blame for that? And yet, you bake those cookies every year, forgetting that you tried the year before because the waves of memory forces their dark underbellies to recede. And every year, you hope that they taste like how mother used to make. C-section, scar. I can pack all of my belongings and my son's in under 30 minutes. I attribute part of this to my military kid upbringing. My parents liked to live the minimalist lifestyle. They'd only put a few decorations up here and there. And while I hated seeing bare walls on each house or apartment we lived in, I definitely see the appeal now. My son is homeschooled because it is easier to do that than explain to his teachers why we move so often. And before you ask, it's not because of the military. Granted, my son is only in first grade, so I'm finding the material relatively easy to teach. But I'm sure in a few years, it'll get hairy. My son, Carter, is always a good sport about leaving. He may not fully understand why at times, but he's too young for me to tell the whole story, and I don't want to burden him with that right now. This has been the longest we've stayed in one place. It's almost been 8 months now, which I've found is long enough for Carter to make friends, and I loved and hated that at the same time. Not at the thought of him making friends, but the inevitable conversation I'm going to have with him when the time comes to leave. He took the last move a little hard, and frankly, I did too. I moved us to the West Coast, a place I had always wanted to live since I was little, but never got the chance to. I wanted Carter to breathe in the saltiness of the seawater, put his feet in the sand, and build sandcastles. I wanted him to experience what it was like to just be a kid for once, and hopefully put down roots. And he got to do that, but only for a measly 4 weeks. Now, living in dreary Seattle, a place I never wanted to move because of its constant gloominess and downpouring rain, is the place we get to call home. Well, at least until she finds us again. And I hope, for Carter's sake, she won't. I supposed I should now tell you the story of why we are running. On the day that I turned 38, I realized how quickly my biological clock was ticking. I had 2 failed marriages at that point, and I was desperate to have my own child. I did a few rounds of IVF using a sperm donor, and when I received countless negative pregnancy tests, my hope dwindled, and so did my bank account. I felt hopeless until my sister volunteered to carry my child for me and be my surrogate. I was surprised, to say in the least, considering we had a rocky relationship over the years and rarely saw eye to eye. But when she offered to be my surrogate, it was as though we had a clean slate. Though I'll admit at times that I was jealous that she could be pregnant while I couldn't. But I knew without her, I wouldn't be having a child. I was just thankful she was doing this for me. Her labor was horrendous. She pushed and pushed for hours and wanted nothing more than a natural home birth. The home birth was one she planned for as soon as she found out she was pregnant. Instead, she was taken to the hospital for an emergency C-section. I held her hand the entire time throughout the ride in the ambulance and to the surgery. I felt as though I had taken a breath for the first time when I heard his cry. When he was set in my arms instead of hers, I watched her joyous expression turn to envy. As she laid in the hospital bed, recovering, she stared at him in the bassinet before turning to me. "Can I name him?" My eyes flickered towards her, her mouth agape as she gave me a sweet smile. "Name him?" I asked, still in awe. Yeah, I had a whole list of names while I was pregnant, and now that I've seen him, I have the perfect name. She paused, waiting for my reaction. I raised my eyebrow, and she replied, "Elliot." Excitement was written all over her face as soon as she said it. While I didn't hate the name, I have always wanted to name my son Carter. There were no words to explain how grateful I was that she did this for me. But I couldn't just give up the name that I've been wanting to use for years. Carter Elliott Smith. Her face dimmed when I said this. "So you won't use Elliot as his first name?" I shook my head, and she plastered on a fake smile, one that I thought was real at the time. "I love it." When I left to go to the bathroom, I thought I heard her call him Elliot, but I didn't know if I was just being paranoid and hearing things, so I brushed it off. The first couple months were hard, way harder than I was expecting. He was colicky, barely sleeping, and therefore neither did I. My sister was more than helpful, and even started living in my guest room to help with those late-night feeds and anything else I needed. It was perfect until I woke up one morning and they were gone. It took me almost a week to find them, and that was only because my mom managed to trap them at her house. My mom knew that she took him as her own when she called him Elliot. Now, looking back at it, I wish I never would have taken her up on her offer. Not that I don't love my son, but I don't love having to move every time she discovers where we live. I hoped she would move on by now, but she's reminded of Carter anytime she glances down at her C-section scar. I heard feet scuffle in the hallway, and my breath hitches every time I hear the sound of shoes close to our door. Not knowing whose they were, I walked over to the door and stood on my tiptoes. She's standing right in front of the door, as if she knows I'm standing behind it. She smiles that sinister smile of hers and says, "You can't run forever." Vice. News Real Talk. The art of soul swapping. New research proposes a radical solution for the estimated 13 million people who unwittingly lost their souls in last year's Black Friday mishap. While hell isn't offering refunds anytime soon, a soul swap isn't out of the question, says Sam Ackerman, sole author on the study and CEO of Exosouls. His paper, titled Devilish Details, a sparse Bayesian learning framework for enhancing the Exosouls algorithm, is published this week in Chaos, a non-linear journal of translational science. In it, Ackerman claims to have unraveled the 2-for-1 soul swap terms and conditions of the Philadelphia Screamer. He then introduces a machine learning model designed to identify likely victims who have yet to come forward, as well as predict the likelihood of unsouled souls going to hell anyway. Ackerman goes on to suggest that when combined with his proprietary Exosouls algorithm, this novel framework can accurately pair last year's Black Friday victims with unsouled, hellbound souls, a finding that could give hope to millions. Vice's own Brett Love spoke with Ackerman while putting his updated soul swap theory to the test in real time. This interview has not been edited for clarity or length because hard-hitting journalism has no filters. Q&A with Brett Love and Sam Ackerman. Brett: Love: So, how about you tell me why I'm stuck in Philadelphia traffic with a conch shell in my front seat? Sam Ackerman: Great. Right to the point. So, that conch shell is there to help you hear the screams of the damned. Cupping your hands to your ears is also an option, but that's more prone to error. I don't know if I like the sound of that. No one does. Now, as for the Philadelphia traffic, we need a bit more context for that one. You remember last year when the real Burning Man, who screams eternal, or simply the Philadelphia Screamer. Most people just call him Phil now. Sure, let's call him Phil. Anyway, after Phil showed up last year, screaming and burning and chained to the William Penn statue atop Philadelphia's City Hall with that Black Friday offer flaming across his torso, people were understandably curious. So, of course, someone flies a drone up there to get a closer look at this giant chained to the Will Penn statue. And forgive me for the recap, but let's not forget how incredible that moment was and still is today. I mean, he's bound there, like Prometheus, except instead of eagles tearing out his liver only for it to regrow, there's a flaming message that burns to life again and again, letter by letter, from neck to navel. It's Hell's version of a flashing neon sign, and it says, "Two souls take the place of one in Black Friday's shadow. Make your wish known, and they shall pay the price." Right. And who can blame people for thinking it's your classic 2-for-1 Black Friday deal? Exactly. Last year's tragic miscalculation really just came down to otherwise honest folk simply hoping to cheat Satan on one day of the year with no consequences whatsoever. They thought they could make their wildest wish come true while sacrificing the souls of two of their worst enemies. When you think about it, the choice of holiday makes perfect sense too. Halloween is too on the nose, and Christmas is off limits. But Thanksgiving is, well, it's a gobbledygook of whitewashed genocide and glorified capitalism. So why wouldn't Satan want to piggyback on that? Just look, and you'll find him in the eyes of crazed consumers everywhere, in that Black Friday aftermath of filth left behind by the world's worst holiday. Wow. You really hate Thanksgiving. What about cranberry sauce? You'll cut out that last part, right? I don't want to turn off potential ExoSouls clients, sure. But you still haven't told me why I'm stuck in Philly traffic this Black Friday. Oh, right. So we already covered Phil, and the rest comes down to word origin. Before Black Friday found its way into the common parlance, it was used by Philadelphia traffic cops who were fed up with the crowds after Thanksgiving. This was back in the 1960s, so it all comes down to a simple misunderstanding. And hell probably wasn't trying to be nefarious here. I mean, they sent their screaming giant to Philadelphia, after all. They just thought that's where Black Friday applied. So they thought it was still 1960-something, even though Phil arrived in 2022. You're talking about relativity and time dilation, right? Yes. No, not really. Listen, the theory of special relativity is a wonderful lens for examining the wonders of the universe, but it likely holds no meaning in hell. Perhaps whoever sent Phil is forced to experience a distorted sense of time passing on Earth to further highlight their own eternity in hell. A form of time torture, if you will. But that's just speculation, something that future research could explore. Regardless, my current research strongly suggests that Hell's Black Friday deal only applies to Philadelphia traffic. What do you mean by suggests? I mean, I'm about to test your soul swap theory here, so you're sure, right? Please don't call it swap. I never mention that term once in my paper, and I don't know why the media keeps throwing it out there. This isn't the movie Freaky Friday. We're not switching souls or bodies or anything like that. Say exchange if you must, but it's in the company name, Exo Souls, with exo meaning external and souls meaning plural. It's a simple 2-for-1 exchange, and at no point do you swap souls with anyone else. Now, do you have the Exo Souls app installed on your phone, Brett? Yeah, but I'm asking if you're sure your soul swap. Is your theory correct? Listen, there are 1,000 different researchers giving 1,000 different reasons for last year's Black Friday mishap. They blame it on wildly irresponsible statistics, poor reading skills, TikTok trends, rising obesity rates, or excess levels of tryptophan. But not one has demonstrated as high a degree of correlation as I have. I'm sure you've already read the paper, but let me offer a quick recap for those who haven't. We know for a fact that people who have turned their souls see themselves with their eyes sewn shut every time they look in a mirror, while most hell-bound people don't advertise that about themselves. We also know that there was a spike in self-reported eyes sewn shut sightings last year, likely due to outrage over misinterpreting Hell's Black Friday offer. Now, I used those reports as a starting point for constructing my sparse Bayesian learning framework while accounting for normal levels of dishonesty. In addition to identifying unreported victims, my model also identifies those with unsold souls who have high hell-bound risk. However, the truly surprising finding comes when looking at the distribution of likely victims. It's a fairly regular distribution. That is, it's standard for places other than the city of brotherly love. More specifically, for places devoid of Philly traffic. What I'm saying is high-traffic Philadelphia areas are almost blank spots on that distribution map of likely victims from last year's Black Friday mishap. That's where people were able to take advantage of Hell's 2-for-1 offer, because that's the area that corresponds to Hell's definition of Black Friday. It's an incredibly strong correlation. And that's why you're stuck in Philly traffic this Black Friday, Brett. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think so. Maybe you could give a quick refresher on correlation versus causation. No, we don't want to risk traffic clearing up on us. Just Google ice cream drowning deaths after the interview. So, without further ado, could you please open the ExoSouls app, Brett? First, I've got to ask,